to share with you a couple things to get your bike ready for bike packing bags. This is my 3T over here, the Extrema. I don't have any bags on it yet, and it's new, so I want to get it ready. Put some things on it to keep the frame safe. As you can see, it's got a really pretty paint job on here, and I want to keep that paint job protected. Big thanks and shout out to the Northwest Arkansas Community College for letting me record in their bike lab here. So I'm in their space. To get the bike ready for bags, there's a few steps. The first is you actually want to measure your frame for the bike packing bags that you're looking at purchasing. On the Apidura website, they're a big bike packing bag brand. You can put in the bike that you have and it will tell you whether or not certain bags fit. If you have a newer bike or are unsure about sizing and things, it's best to measure. I have not as much space as maybe some others do for bike packing bags. For example, this bag here is really awesome, but there's not enough space with my water bottles. If I was to take the water bottle cages off, I could use this full frame bag, but I like to have the water bottles. After we've done all the measuring, let's order the bag. Perfect. We're gonna put this bag here. It looks like it's actually gonna fit perfectly in this space. Before we put the bag on the bike, I wanna protect this beautiful paint job that was custom for me on this new bike here. So what I'm gonna do is put on clear 3M tape. You can order it all over Amazon. They call it helicopter tape sometimes. So to do that, order it, wait for it to come in the mail. When you're gonna put it on, you wanna use alcohol, and that helps adhere the 3M clear tape to your frame without bubbles. Because we're in the bike lab, we're gonna put on these gloves here. I've seen that done before. We've got the alcohol spray. I've got the bag here. I'm gonna just figure out where, when I put the bag on the frame, where I'll need to put the tape. So it looks like right in this area, and I've already pre-cut it, so it's ready to go. Just gonna spray a little alcohol on there. Go ahead and wrap this around on that space. Boom, ready for the bag. You can go all fancy and put clear tape all over your entire bike. I've done that before. It's kind of a pain, but it will definitely protect your frame. I have had bags rub off shiny paint, like kind of turning it into more of a matte paint because of bike packing bag straps. So I would say if you care about your frame, definitely put the 3M tape on. It's an inexpensive way to get your bike and keep it nice. If you are putting bike packing bags on your bike and you don't have 3M clear tape or helicopter tape, but you really need bags and you need to put them on, you can always use painter's tape. I actually have a friend, her name is Abby. She's been in some of my bike packing videos where she uses this all the time on all of her bikes. So if you don't have that tape, that 3M clear tape, you can use painter's tape, and when you pull it off, it doesn't leave any residue, and it's very inexpensive. This is, I don't know, $5 or $4 at the hardware store. Ta-da! The bike is ready. This is the Apidura Racing frame packs. They're middle size, the 2.5 liters. They have a 4 liter and a 1 liter as well. I like this bag. It's great for just carrying odds and ends. I think this is basically just full of snacks right now. If you're going to be using a handlebar bag, you want to also measure the width between your handlebar hoods. If you're like me and you ride a 36 centimeter bar, you're not going to be able to find very many bags that fit between the hoods. So keep that in mind if you're riding a more narrow bar, especially if you're on a small bike, you have a narrow bar and your drop is quite low. I do have a good amount of drop here on my bike, but I do not choose to use a handlebar bag. I prefer to put my hands here on the bars pretty often. Obviously, the other way around. But for me, that's where I like to put my hands. So I don't like to use a handlebar bag, but it is a good way to have space, especially for like snacks if you're not using a feed bag. For me, I use Aerobars occasionally, and I will when I race this summer at the Transcontinental. I'll have Aerobars, and I'll use a TT pack, which kind of comes out straight. Instead of going outwards towards the hoods, it comes straight out to the bike, so it doesn't bother me. The other measuring things that we're going to do are, if you're going to use a saddle bag, you want to see what the distance in drop is here. So if you're riding a small frame, 51 or smaller, then your chances of using a saddlebag are a little bit lower. I've got a pretty good amount of clearance here. I'm going to put a saddlebag on and see how much room we have after. This is the Backcountry from Apidura. It's pretty big. I use this on anything where I'm carrying a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad. Even if I smush it up against, there's still a good amount of room underneath the saddle. Like I mentioned, if you've got a smaller bike, you will probably need to use 7 liters or smaller. Other things that you can do to protect your frame or protect the contact points are putting something on your seat post. People don't typically think about that, but if you do have a saddlebag, the wear from the bag rubbing can happen. So using that clear 3M tape works really well. Other things you can do to prepare your bike for bike packing bags, if you're riding with a suspension fork, you actually want to add air to the fork. You're adding weight in those bags, and therefore it's going to change the handling, and you're going to need to add air to prevent from bottoming out. Something I have almost experienced once before a race. Didn't realize that that was something I needed to do. So make sure that you check your suspension and the air based on your bike packing bags and the weight. Another thing that you should also pay attention to is the amount of air in your tires. When you add weight, it also changes the PSI or bar you should be running in your tires. So pay attention to that when you've put that additional weight on the bike. Consider using a smaller chain ring when you put on the weight on your bike. When you add weight and you're going somewhere where you're going to be going up and climbing a lot, that additional weight is going to make it a lot harder for you to go as fast as you normally would. If you're riding a bigger chain ring, you're going to have a lower cadence. And in the long run, over a long period of time, if you're bike packing, will make you very fatigued. If you switch to a smaller chain ring, then you can pedal a little bit more, a little faster cadence. And instead of using as much of your muscle, you're using more of your endurance. I am riding a 38 tooth chainring on this bike, something I almost always do on my ultra cycling bike packing event bikes because typically I have weight. Sometimes I ride a 40 or a 42, but I just really love this to spin, and I love to be able to go up with all of the weight on my bike without having to get off and walk. Other hacks for bike packing with bags is if you're going to go and do a race, 100% I would suggest at least 1 to 2 weeks before you're getting ready to leave for the race to put the bike bags on your bike fully loaded. You can put the items that you're going to use in the race, or if that seems like too much pressure, you can put things in like a sleeping bag or a sleeping pad or a bunch of clothes or a blanket or some towels that just kind of take up the space so you can see how the bags feel on your bike. For me, I have to be very careful with inner thigh rub on bags. So testing out the bags and the stuff inside is very important for me. Not only to see if you have irritation points, but also riding a weighted bike is a change. We all know what it's like to get on a bike with a lot of weight and be like, this is terrible. Nobody wants to do that on race day. Better to get that out of the way a couple weeks in advance. Oftentimes 4 weeks out from an event, I'm riding my fully loaded bike with as much weight on it as I would potentially be carrying in terms of water. Just to get used to it, your center of gravity changes, especially when you have a big saddlebag on the back. So when you stand up out of the saddle, you can feel that weight shifting. It's funny when you finish a ride, though, say you've ridden for, a couple 100 miles with a saddlebag, and then you take the saddlebag off, it feels super weird because, again, you're used to that weight there, and when you take it off, it's not there, so your distribution feels different when you stand out of the saddle. When I talk about getting my bike ready, I do talk about carrying the weight that I would be carrying for the race, and that includes water. Typically, water for me, I don't want to wear on my back, and a lot of people choose to wear some sort of hydration vest. Apidura has a great hydration vest that I use while I'm mountain biking for shorter rides, but for when you're riding multiple days in a row, the last thing I want to do is be wearing something that's around my shoulders, especially if you're a woman and you're wearing a sports bra. It's just too many layers. And then you add in a vest and you add in a jacket and maybe you're wearing a puffy and it's just a lot. So having that hydration vest for me is not the move for racing. You can use 3 bottles, and if you are using a frame bag, you can also put a hydration bladder inside. So that's something that you can practice. You can put water on your front fork. I personally actually race with a 1.5 liter hydration bladder in the 4-liter bag that goes all the way back. So I'm carrying 3 bottles and the 1.5 liter hydration bladder. If you have a smaller frame, you could nix one of these bottles and be able to use the bigger frame bag. So that's a thought. Apidura has a cage adapter, which allows you to move the bottle up and down depending on your bike frame and where the bottle cages are. So if you wanted to use a full frame bag, such as the 4-liter racing frame bag, you could use that and have it come down a little bit further if your bike frame is small. And then you can have 1.5 liters in the frame bag rather than just 26 ounces in a bottle. That's all I got for what you need to do to your bike to get it ready for a bike packing bag setup. You can find links to all of the bags I talked about below in the information. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you have any ideas on other bike packing questions in relation to bags or setups, then I'm happy to create videos about that. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. It means I can continue making these videos. Thanks for watching. Cheers.